Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of the Nationalist View. We have with us a very special guest today, Mr. Senge Sering from Gilgit-Baltistan. Senge
थैंक यू
साहब,
सो मच सर.
thank you so
बहुत
much
बहुत
for
धन्यवाद. बहुत
जी
बहुत
जी
शुक्रिया आपका, आपने मुझे इनवाइट किया. थैंक यू
जी
सो मच.
and thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedule and being with us. And I'll just give a brief description of introduction of Mr. Senge Sering, and the detailed bio will be there in the description box of this YouTube video, and you can go through that. So, Mr. Senge Sering is a researcher and human rights advocate. He was born in Pakistan occupied Gilgit-Baltistan. He writes extensively about sufferings of the people of Gilgit-Baltistan, and he has raised these issues regularly at international fora. Apart from that, he is also the founder of Washington, D.C. based Institute for Gilgit-Baltistan Studies, which has a firm commitment to the protection and promotion of human rights in Gilgit-Baltistan, and which holds events to disseminate information on local freedoms, democracy, extremism and terrorism, demilitarization and cross-border trade, environment sustainability and preservation of indigenous culture. The institute was founded in 2010, and since then it has established partnerships in the United Nations, the US Congress, the British and the European Parliament, as well as various think tanks and academic institutions. And Gilgit-Baltistan is a region about which there is not too much of conversation despite a lot of things happening there. So we are going to get Mr. Senge's perspective on this and try to decode what is happening in Gilgit-Baltistan. So, sir, for our viewers, my first question is that for our viewers, could you please explain what is exactly Gilgit-Baltistan and what are its historical and civilizational links with Jammu Kashmir, Tibet, and India?
धन्यवाद one more time. Thank you so much, Arun ji. I'm really honored to be on your show and hope to be a repeat guest. So Gilgit-Baltistan, as you asked, in the modern contemporary form, it's composed of 10 districts. It is part of the Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So there are 10 districts in the north, which is called Gilgit-Baltistan, and then there are 10 districts in the south, which the Pakistanis like to call so-called Azad Kashmir. So these are the areas which were part of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. And the relationship with India is civilizational, as you know. We have been part of India for thousands and thousands of years. And our linguistic affiliation with India, the local demography that has been influenced by the Indian culture and civilization. In the olden times, I would say we had these famous, renowned kingdoms that rule Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. Some of them that I can name right now is the Lohara dynasty, the Mauryas, the Ujjains, the Karkotas, the Kushans, the Central Asian Scythians, for instance, that had a connection with India, the Utpalas. Then we had the Palola Shahis, which helped spread Buddhism in the area. So these dynasties that ruled Jammu and Kashmir and helped bring Hinduism and Buddhism to Gilgit-Baltistan, they formed and helped the region evolve in what it became part of. When it became part of Jammu and Kashmir at some point in the 18th and 19th century. Our relationship with Tibet is very profound, I would say. My native language is Balti, which is a dialect of Tibetan. So you can tell that, local people, if you exclude the Pakistani settlers, we can say that about 35% of the local people, they speak Balti or Puriki, which are the dialects of the archaic Tibetan language. And Balti is extremely important culturally because there are about more than 200 Tibetan dialects, and Balti happens to be one of the oldest. So anyone who's doing research on the evolution of Tibetan language must learn Balti to understand, what went through the different stages of its evolution. Tibetan Empire during the Yarlungpa dynasty and before, they had stretched their kingdom all the way to Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral. In some parts of Tajikistan, for instance, they had influence. The Tibetans went all the way down to the Bay of Bengal. And there was a huge cultural influence that the Tibetans were able to spread. And then because of Buddhism that came from India into Tibet, the relationship of Tibet and India became very, it became permanent, but also became very significant for the makeup of local culture and civilization. So I think we are ethnically, you can say that we are a mixture of Indian and Tibetan people. So our features are a little different. You can tell, the more east you go in Gilgit-Baltistan, you find more Tibetan features. But the more west you go in Gilgit-Baltistan, you see there's a lot of stronger admixture of the Indian. North Indian, mix ethnicity in those areas. In Gilgit, for instance, strong Indian influence. We have our ethnicities that come all the way from Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. We have this really unique ethnic group. They are called Domes, or in ancient time they were called Dromes. And they came from India. They came into modern day Afghanistan and Persia, and they went through Turkey into Syria and all the way to Egypt. They went into Eastern Europe. Over there, they're called Dromes, and they're called Roma, and they're almost like 20 million people who trace their ancestry all the way to Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. So we have, those people living there in Gilgit-Baltistan, which unfortunately, because of Pakistani policies, are on the verge of extinction. Their culture is dying, their language is dying, and the locals are trying to Islamize them. So, that is an unfortunate situation. Then we have this unique group of people who speak the Brusheski language, and they are, an isolate in definition of they have no connection with any other linguistic family in the world. So that makes them very unique. Some people say that they may have some connection with Siberian ethnic groups, but we don't know for sure for the time being. We also have, other than Tibetans, we have the Dardik population, which is the largest ethnic group in Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral, and they are very closely related to Kashmiris. You can tell me whenever I have to speak, because I can go on, but
no, please carry.
So, all right. So yeah, they're really closely related to our communities in Kashmir Valley, for instance. They trace their ancestry back to central India, the Dardik people. So, these are the different communities that form modern day Gilgit-Baltistan, and clearly show, there's a very strong link with India as well as Tibet as far as, our civilization is concerned. And I think, that makes us, you asked, the relationship with India. Other than civilization, we have also this constitutional relationship because of India Independence Act. So we are constitutionally we're part of India, because in 1947 the letter of accession for the entire Jammu Kashmir, including Gilgit-Baltistan, was awarded to India through the British monarchy, right? So these are the realities, not only that ancient civilization connects us, but also that right now before I became a US citizen, I was an Indian citizen. Even though I was in Pakistani occupation, I was on the land that was in Pakistani occupation, but legally I was an Indian citizen. I was born Indian citizen. So you can see that connection is very strong, moving forward from here. Thank you.
Sir, so then how did Gilgit-Baltistan come under the Pakistani control or Pakistani occupation in 1947-48? And what is its status, under the international law? Many say that, it's a disputed territory. And as you rightly mentioned, that technically or constitutionally it was part of India. But if you can, take our viewers through this journey, that how did, this region come under the Pakistani occupation?
So, and many Indians know British were the sovereign here, and they came up with this constitutional procedure, which they call India Independence Act. It was approved by the British cabinet in London. It was approved by their parliament and the king. And based on that, they were going to divide the British India as well as the princely states. We have like 562 princely states. And the procedure that they came up with, which everyone agreed upon, was that the ruler of each princely state will decide which dominion, India or Pakistan, they were going to join. It was very simple. So based on their own interest, as well as their geographical proximity, as well as their economic and other interests, they were going to decide their culture, their identity, all that matters, right? So it was going to be who's going to join what dominion, India or Pakistan. So what happens is that so it was promulgated on 18th of July. So I want to take of 1947, right? So that is the cutoff line, 18th of July, 1947. I want to take you back like a few months back. What does Maharaja Hari Singh do? He calls all the in official terms, they used to call the local chieftains as zamindar. So this is the title that Maharaja Gulab Singh, Hari Singh, and all these they gave to the local chieftains in different valleys of Gilgit-Baltistan. There were like 17 or 18 of them there. So he called all these zamindars from Ladakh and Gilgit-Baltistan, and they gave, and except I think one of them, which the books say that he was ill, he was not feeling well. All other 17 of them showed up in Srinagar, and they showed full allegiance to him, and gave him the right to make decisions on behalf of the entire state. At that point, we also know that Sheikh Abdullah, he was very close to the Prime Minister of India, and he was opposed to Jammu Kashmir joining Pakistan. He wanted part of India. Then we also know demographically that Jammu being a predominantly Hindu area and Ladakh being predominantly Buddhist area, they were automatically, going to choose India over Pakistan. So these are the vulnerabilities, political as well as cultural vulnerabilities that I want to put forward before I answer to your question, which is what happened in 1947. So what happened is that I think Jammu Kashmir decided to January 20. In October, between 24 and 26, it decided to join India. And that was not acceptable for many in Pakistan at that time, the rulers. And through the help of Gilgit scouts, through the help of Chitral scouts and other Pakistani regular army, they decided to attack the Punch area, the Pir Panjal area, and Gilgit area. So by the time, Prime Minister Nehru was able to take the case to the United Nations, which I don't understand why, but, he did it anyways. That's a different topic. And he went and he complained to the United Nations that, the entire Jammu Kashmir had acceded to India. And, the accession letter has been accepted by the King of England, and it has become official. This is our land. We want Pakistan to withdraw. So then, eventually, as the things evolved, UN resolution came into being, which said that United Nations Security Council said that, okay, Pakistan has to withdraw, and then we'll ask what the local people like, if they want to be with India or not. And I think it was a non-binding resolution, and, that's where the ceasefire line came. So today we have this, ceasefire line converted into line of control after the Simla agreement, which made it bilateral. So I think, they changed the situation from, making it a multilateral to a bilateral, dispute, which India and Pakistan are supposed to, manage it and eventually solve it. So I think your question that, that takes me back to Pakistan was able to keep Gilgit under its control. The Gilgit scouts, they were scouts created by Maharaja Hari Singh. And so because Pakistan was the Gilgit scouts, Gilgit scouts, it was created by Maharaja Hari Singh, and they took oath of allegiance and loyalty to Maharaja. And unfortunately, because of some British officers like Major Brown who were present there and others, they had different ideas. If you look at before the creation of Pakistan, the situation in Afghanistan was very adversarial in its behavior towards Pakistan. And I think it was one of the only nations which refused to recognize Pakistan as a dominion. and later as a sovereign country as part of the United Nations. So I think Afghanistan was not happy, and then we had Soviet Union, which were not very friendly with the Western world, especially the British, who ruled India at that time. So I think it was not feasible for the British to leave a part of India that would allow India create a bridge with Afghanistan and Tajikistan and other parts, right? So I think that is the background in which a lot of tension and clashes were happening in Jammu and Kashmir. Although, if you look at the history, it will say that the situation was created because of the Hindu and Muslim differences. That's what they try to bring it. But the underlying, there were other issues, strategic issues, far-reaching strategic, implications that people do not often talk about, and that is what led to the division of Jammu and Kashmir, where eventually Pakistani regular forces, Gilgit Scouts, Chitral Scouts, and all of them, they came together. They were able to capture land, and it came into Pakistani occupation, which is now we call it Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. 10 districts in the south, starting from Bimbar, Mirpur, all the way up to Kunjra Pass. 10 districts in the north. And historically, if you look at documents, these areas were called they were called the northern areas of Jammu and Kashmir. So what happened is that when Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, he tried to change the nomenclature, the name of the area, he replaced Jammu and Kashmir, and he started calling it northern areas of Pakistan. So in 1963, when Bhutto, he was there and he signed these documents with China, China recognized that this is a disputed area, this is part of Jammu and Kashmir, and that's why they cannot have a permanent border, delimitation. And so that is something that, we need to understand, that, China considers this as disputed. As well as international community considers is disputed. India has a letter of accession. Pakistan does not. United Nations asked Pakistan for a complete withdrawal that includes all nationals. And when you say all nationals, it includes the military. So Pakistan had to withdraw. Pakistan had a limited time within which it was supposed to withdraw. It refused to withdraw because of what I told you earlier, that the majority of the Muslims in the Kashmir Valley were not in favor of joining Pakistan. So if the Hindus and Buddhists are not in favor and the majority of the Muslims in the valley are not in favor, Pakistan was not going to get more than 30% of the votes, even if a plebiscite had happened, right? So that is something that, prompted Pakistan, okay, we have a border with China, we have a border with Afghanistan through Gilgit-Baltistan. We do not want India to have that border with Afghanistan. That is going to be, an existential threat for us. So might as well just keep this land instead of going for a plebiscite. It's a big gamble. We could lose the entire state. So we'll keep the state. We will not move out. And then, as we call, what they call in the military term, the salami, slicing technique, we'll use that, and slowly we'll use Islam, we'll use other tactics, and slowly we'll try to encroach more on Kashmir. But a lot of things happened between that time, and eventually Pakistan realized that every time when it would attack India, it would not be able to capture any land from India. So I think the dispute is right there, where we see, India, Pakistan both have parts of it. India officially claims it. Pakistan does not. Pakistan has its own constitution where it says eventually when the people of Jammu and Kashmir decide to join Pakistan, then they will be called Pakistani. So if you look at, Pakistan's documents, for instance, in Supreme Court in 1994, there was a ruling saying that Gilgit-Baltistan is not part of Pakistan. Then in 2019, the Supreme Court once again said Gilgit-Baltistan is part of Jammu and Kashmir. It is not part of Pakistan. Then the POJK, which they call Azad Kashmir, it has its own Supreme and High Courts. In 1993, the court said it is not part of Pakistan, it's part of Jammu and Kashmir. And then, it clearly shows that, this land is disputed. It is not part of Pakistan. And, we're just waiting for Pakistan to move out. So the final, the destiny that of the people that could be ascertained.
So let's come to what is happening in Gilgit-Baltistan right now. Uh, there is question of full constitutional rights, and then representation of the Gilgit-Baltistan people in the legislatures, and there is Pakistani control for now almost for about 8 decades. So what exactly is the status of constitutional rights, representation of people of Gilgit-Baltistan right now? And also, if you can tell us a little bit about, to begin with, the electoral and governance structure of the Gilgit-Baltistan today, and who are the major political forces, and what is the current status of assembly, local body elections. So, that would be a good kind of a primer for our viewers also, and it will help us to put things in perspective. And then we'll come over to the next question after this, that there are a lot of demonstrations and going on in Gilgit-Baltistan right now. But
Yeah.
overall, if you can just give us a primer on the constitutional architecture or the electoral and governance structure in Gilgit-Baltistan today, and how it is not being granted the constitutional rights.
So there are a lot of questions within your one question. I would say, as far as constitution is concerned, as I mentioned, that Pakistan, because of its commitments to the United Nations and because of its commitment to the sovereign British authority. So if you look at Pakistan, it was created as a dominion, not an independent country in 1947. It became independent country on 23rd of March 1956. Up until then, the foreign affairs, finance, and defense was in the hand of London. So we know that up until then, the person who used to rule Pakistan was not the president of Pakistan. It was the Governor General, the British Governor General to Pakistan. That was their official designation. So they were committed to British. They did not have much in their own hand at that time. So at that time, because Maharaja Hari Singh had rented out Gilgit, some parts of Gilgit, to the British, and it had been converted into an agency, and there was a lease signed with Maharaja. So in the beginning, what happened is that Pakistan kept ruling Gilgit and Baltistan separately. Gilgit was the agency under Pakistan, and Baltistan was part of Ladakh district under Pakistan. Now, Ladakh district was part of Jammu province, not Kashmir province. So I am historically part of the Jammu province, just like any other person who comes from Jammu. There's this misconception that Baltistan was under Kashmir. We were not. We were directly part of Jammu province under the Maharajas. So then eventually what happened is that, a lot of things changed. Bangladesh happened. Karakoram Highway was getting constructed. China became extremely important. United States and Europe started looking at Soviet Union as a huge threat. So Afghanistan became important. So Gilgit-Baltistan's importance, was right there, right at the confluence of all these countries. It was like this, a pivot that put everything together, right? So that is the time when Bhutto decided that we are going to give this place a new structure. So he came up with this name North of Pakistan, and he talked about creating two new provinces. One will be the so-called Azad Kashmir, the one will be so-called Gilgit-Baltistan. But again, they were committed to the Kashmir cause. The military saw Kashmir as a huge opportunity. They wanted to continue to have that relationship flourish and make a lot of tons and tons of money and strategic benefit because of the Kashmir issue. And Kashmir became extremely important at that time. So they could not really detach Gilgit-Baltistan from the larger Jammu Kashmir area. So if you look at all the maps, the official maps, they still show, until Imran Khan came and he changed the map. Up until then, they still showed Baltistan as part of Ladakh, even in their own official maps, and Gilgit as a separate agency within Jammu and Kashmir. So I think, Pakistan was committed to this idea that we are benefiting, humongously, enormously from Jammu Kashmir, strategically and monetarily. And because of that, army was not going to let it go. So I think this issue just lingered on of whether Gilgit-Baltistan should be granted a special, autonomous status within Pakistan, should be granted its own constitutional status, with whether it should be merged back, into Jammu and Kashmir administratively. Because if you remember, when they occupied this area, they realized that we need to keep it separate. So because of Afghanistan and China and Soviet Union, so they signed this so-called fake document with fake people who are not the real representatives, called Karachi Agreement, and separated Gilgit-Baltistan from the rest of the entire POK. And the POK kept saying, eventually you have to give it back to us. And people of Gilgit-Baltistan were like, no, we want our own setup. So there was a lot of, commotion there, and given Pakistan's strategic interest, Pakistan was never able to extend its own constitution to Gilgit-Baltistan or the rest of POJK. So it always remained a disputed area. It always remained part of Jammu and Kashmir. So that is one reason that we are officially not a part of Pakistan. But then local people were making a lot of noise. There were a lot of resentment. There was a lot of dissatisfaction. So this gave this strange setup. Created this, ordinance, and this ordinance allowed Gilgit-Baltistan to have its own dummy assembly, a dummy chief minister, a dummy governor, whereas they still have this authority in Islamabad called Jammu Kashmir Ministry of Kashmir Affairs, Ministry of Jammu and Kashmir Affairs, and that was the real, authority over Gilgit-Baltistan. But there was this dummy structure that they created. They created this dummy assembly. They gave them a few members. Today they're 24 members, which are directly elected by people in different parts of Gilgit-Baltistan, with no legislative authority. They can pass a resolution, send it to Islamabad, and it's up to Islamabad whether they approve it or not. So they just pass resolution, just like you and I, we demand certain things from governments. They can only demand, and that's about it. So they do not have any fiscal authority. So that's another problem, that if you go to Pakistan today, and if you go from Lahore to Islamabad on their expressways, or we call freeways or motorways, they can collect thousands and thousands of dollars worth of tolls on those roads every day. Gilgit-Baltistan is not allowed to collect, any tolls on its roads. Especially those roads that connect Pakistan and China. Without us, there's no physical connection to China, and China is the most important country for Pakistan. So they're not allowed to collect, any royalties on the rivers. They're not allowed to collect any royalties on the dams. They're not allowed to collect any royalties on the forest that they sell, the timber, or any other aspect of, revenue generation and production mechanisms. Like, for instance, you say tourism. Tourism is one of the biggest revenue generation, venue, an article, and still, all the money goes to Pakistan. So, they are kind of like dummies, that there are facade that, for the international community to just shut up, these people are happy, they have their own setup, don't interfere, so just to discourage the international community to criticize Pakistan and object to Pakistan's presence there. So this is, what the dummy setup they have right now. They just had election. They're going to select a chief minister. A chief minister is approved by Pakistani political parties. So that's another, unconstitutional thing that do that. For, as I just explained, constitutionally, we're not part of Pakistan, and yet what they do, they bring Pakistani political parties, which by Pakistani constitution should not be exercising their, rights outside the constitutional boundaries of Pakistan, and yet they're in POJK, in Muzaffarabad, in Mirpur, in Gilgit-Baltistan, impose themselves on the local people, and they become our rulers, colonial masters, and there's this Pakistani bureaucracy They have absolute authority in their hand, and they decide everything. And these ministers that they create, the dummy ministers, they go to these, bureaucrats and beg for funds and beg for projects. Development fund is 12, 13 billion Pakistani rupees, which comes down to, I don't know, 4 or 5 billion Indian rupees for the entire year. This year, if you saw what Pakistan has done, they have brought down their education and health funds by about 15 to 20%, because Pakistan, is broke, that don't have money for its own country. So imagine, obviously they don't have money for Gilgit-Baltistan if they can't feed their own people. They have this absolute authority, like an imperial power of the Pakistani, is called Field Command Office of Northern Area. The Major General or the Lieutenant General sits there. He's the Pakistani military representative. He's like the god, He makes all the decisions. Everything else is just revolved around him. And so this is, just a fake setup that they have created. Now you compare that with India, right? In India, we have proper constitutional setup. We have citizenship rights right from 1950 onward, when India became a sovereign country. We have the local people, make their own decisions, on everything that matters to them. So I think this is something that local people see all the time. They compare themselves with the Indians, and they compare themselves with with the rest of Pakistanis, and they say, oh my God, we were stupid to demand, to become part of Pakistan, because look at the Baluch. They are a Pakistani constitutional, province, and yet they do not have any authority over their land and resources, over their own destiny, over their political matters. Look at the Pashtun, getting massacred and bombed and carpet bombed every day. So now people are realizing, and look at Jammu Kashmir, there's this huge, blossoming economy, and, culture is protected. Our languages are protected. Their state languages, their national languages. Here, our languages are completely banned for the last 78 years. Our economy is dying. So, these are the things that people are thinking that, we should be part of, India, where we could get some, basic rights that as a dignified citizen we deserve. Thank you.
So, sir, my last question is, given the current situation in Gilgit-Baltistan, and which has been kind of deteriorating over the last more than 7 decades, so what do you see as the most realistic and just way forward for its people?
All right. So what happens is, let's say you're traveling on a road, right, and you come to a fork. And then you go on the wrong side, and then, it's a human nature. You say, I've come this far, probably I'll just go 2 more miles. Maybe, I'll get to where I want to go. This is what the people of Gilgit-Baltistan has been doing for the last 78 years, and they haven't gotten anywhere. So my proposal is go back to where the fork was and get on the right path. And the right path is that the letter of accession was given to awarded to India through the sovereign authorities. We became Indian citizens. We have all the rights in India. Just go back and demand that. So the most peaceful way that we can demand our rights is that Pakistan must withdraw. That's what the United Nations resolution said. Pakistan never complied, but we want them to withdraw. So yesterday I was listening to this speech of a leader who has become very prominent in POJK, and he was saying, हम जाने, हिंदुस्तान जाने, जम्मू कश्मीर जाने, तुम यहाँ से निकलो. This is exactly what I've been saying for the last 20 years, And this is what I want to tell to those people who think that independence is still an option. Even if you want to be an independent country, you still have to talk to India, not Pakistan. Because India has the constitutional relationship with you, you have to negotiate with India, not Pakistan. So what happens is that, Pakistanis call us traitors. They don't want us to talk to India. They think, talking to India is betraying Islam. Local people have now realized that this is all nonsense. Nobody's betraying anything. We're just demanding our own basic rights, our constitutional rights, which are enshrined in India's constitution. So, local people are waking up and they're telling Pakistan, forget about, our future. You do one job. There was one job that you were supposed to do. There was one thing that you were asked to do: withdraw your nationals from the entire Gilgit-Baltistan, Mirpur, Muzaffarabad. So that is something that need to happen. Once that happens, we need to talk to India. Indian constitutions gives us good rights, adequate rights. Indian constitution gives us a dignified life. Their institutions are functioning. Their judiciary works. Their political system works. Their financial system works. It is on the path to become the third largest economy in the world, 5 trillion economy. It is on the path to become the third largest military force in the world. We will be protected. Our resources will be protected. If we do not take that path, we will become a minority in our own land. Our languages will be gone. Our identity will be gone. Our resources will be gone. China will just devour us. Nothing will be left of us. We'll become what Tibet and Xinjiang has become, East Turkestan, they call it, local people. So this is something that I've been proposing. And, a lot of people now making that noise, especially the southern 10 districts of Jammu and Kashmir. A lot of people in the northern 10 districts of, POJK are making the same noise as well. So I think this is something that, maybe local people will eventually come to when it comes to push comes to.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Sering. And, I think Gilgit-Baltistan is a story which needs to be told to the world in much greater detail. So you have been doing it for the last, so many decades. And we are going to keep a track of Gilgit-Baltistan, and we're going to keep on doing regular shows on it. And we hope to host you back soon, and, talk more in detail about what is the ground level situation in terms of human rights, in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of the human resource development parameters, human development index. So all these things, and especially I think one very crucial issue is the protecting the culture and the language, because that becomes the first casualty whenever a foreign force occupies a region. As you rightly mentioned, it has happened in Tibet, it has happened in East Turkestan. So thank you so much once again for taking time out from your busy schedule, and thank you viewers for watching. We'll be back soon with another show and another conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.